Hello, welcome to Miss Maud's Felted Floofs. I'm Vicky and today we are going to be making this little red duffel coat. It's got a nice little hood on the back, wide collar and some added cuffs. It's quite a simple make, quite easy to do once you break it down. I've done a similar thing before with this teddy, although this is made in a slightly different way. But if you do prefer written instructions, I have got a book available. You can buy it on Amazon or download that as a PDF via my Etsy store, and I'll put some links in the descriptions below. But the version we're going to do today is slightly simplified, tiny little bit different to that. And it's going to go on this little gentleman here. So let's go, let's get started. Right, so you'll notice that this little guy doesn't yet have arms. We're going to be making that as part of the coat. He's just a little standard art doll. He's got some little wires coming out of his feet there. That's to attach him to his base. So we're going to be making the coat, the base of the coat, out of this acrylic felt sheet. It doesn't have to be wool. Any sort of felt sheet will work. And we're going to be covering it with some of this lovely red wool. It's from World of Wool. I believe it's called Pinwheel, but I'll double check and I'll put that in the description. Right, so we start off, we're going to measure from round about the mouth down to wherever you want the coat to reach to. I'm going sort of mid-thigh with this one. That was about 11 centimetres. And then you also want to measure, yes, that's 11 centimetres. Also want to measure around the trunk, but you want to add a few centimetres on because we do want to have sort of the lapels at the front and have it a little bit open. So that was about 12 centimetres. Right, so I've cut that out now. It ended up being about 11 centimetres by 14 centimetres because I did add that a little bit extra. You can just wrap it around your doll. Make sure that's going to be okay. Perfect. Right, pop him to one side. So here I've swapped out my regular felting mat for a brush mat. I just find it really good to get some flat felting started on the brush mat. So just take a chunk of whatever colour you want to do your coat. This is that nice World of Wool. I've just checked again, it's called Loganberry, not Pinwheel. I was thinking of the wrong one. So if you want to do that colour, that's what it's called. So now I'm just laying this out, teasing it out, and using the punch tool to start that off there, start felting that into the felt sheet. You want to leave about 1 centimetre over the edges so you can wrap that around. It's me just pulling out a little bit of vegetable matter from the wool. And just continuing to felt that in, and I'll speed up this part until I've got it all covered. Don't worry too much at this stage about getting it perfectly flat and even. We are going to come back to it with a finer gauge needle and just work on that a little bit more. So here I am just covering the bottom. I do keep peeling it off the mat and moving it around because the mat isn't quite big enough, but that's fine. Of course, if you don't have a brush mat, just use a regular felting mat. That will work just the same. You just really have to work with what you've got. So now I'm just going to peel that off the mat, flip it over and start tucking in these little edges over to the back. Just going over first with the punch tool and also with the clover pen. I just found the punch tool wasn't quite getting all of those little ends, so I am using both. The clover pens are great if you put a couple of needles in rather than all three, and they're good for doing flat felting bits like this. There I go again with the clover pen, just tucking all that in, making sure it's all neat and tidy. And once more with the punch tool, just to nip all those little bits in. Now I'm just going to go through the same process on the back, just fanning out that piece of wool and felting it on. You probably don't want to watch me do this all over again, so let's skip forward to the next step. So once you've felted both sides, just put it back on your regular felting mat and get whichever needle you feel comfortable with. This is a clover pen with two 38 gauge triangular needles in. There might be known where you're from as regular needles. And I'm just basically working my way all over both sides just to try and smooth all that out a bit. Once you've done one side, just peel it off your mat very gently, flip it over, do the other side exactly the same. Once I went over with the 38 regular, I then did switch to a 40 gauge spiral needle. It's just a little bit finer and you can really flatten out those last few lumps and bumps, and it hides the needle marks really nicely. So at this point I'll just fast forward to where I'd felted both sides and smoothed them out. So here I am just finishing off with that 40 spiral needle, and it's all really looking nice and smooth now, and it's really well felted. So if you just gently peel it up off your mat, you don't want to just pull it off too roughly because then you'll lose half of the felt. Pick off any little bits it might have picked up off your mat. There's always some fibres left from a previous project. And next we're just going to straighten up these edges a little bit. I'm going to use two coasters to do this and my 40 spiral needle. If you don't have coasters, you can use 2 bits of cardboard, or there are some little bits of plastic that you can buy, or leather that you can felt between. You can also use leather finger guards to hold the edges, just whatever you have really. But if you don't have anything, just 2 bits of cardboard works really well. And we're just going to go along each of the edges and tidy those up. So once you're happy with how that's looking, just put those coasters to one side. I'm going to try this against our little character to see how well it's fitting. So you just place it in the middle and wrap it around, and then you can just see how that's going to look. He's got some nice wide lapels there. Just fold those back, and you can sort of gauge how much you want that coat to be open, how much you want it to be closed. And once you know how you want it to look, just start felting along that edge, not right to the edge, just along to the point where you want the coat to be open and where you want it to be attached. I tend to leave the front open, and then I leave the collar unattached, and I leave the very bottom unattached, so it does look like it's a nice flappy coat that he's wearing. Now in hindsight, I did make a little bit of a mistake here. I decided later on that I was going to add a trim around the coat, but before you attach it would really be the point where you would add any sort of trim. You can use yarn or any sort of embellishments that you have in your craft stash. And it's so much easier to do when it's not attached to the figure, but you will see me realise my error later on, and I'll try and fix that. So here I'm just adding the finishing touches, just felting underneath and on top of the collar, just to keep it pinned down there. It does pop up a little bit later, but I give it another good felt once I'm finished. So there we go. There's that step all done, and we're going to move on to his arms next. So we'll just put him to one side, pop you over there, and this is the wire that I use. It's a 2mm plastic coated, well, garden wire I suppose it is, and it's really nice and strong. Gives a nice strong armature. So you just take some wire cutters, and I cut about 30 centimeters of wire for the arms, but you might have to adjust that depending on the size of the character that you're doing and how big the arms should be. So you just take your awl, find where the shoulders are, and punch a hole straight through there. It might take a bit of wiggling around. I do like to felt my sculptures quite firmly, so it does take me a while to manage to punch that through to the other side. There we go. Oh, one more extra wiggle. That wire didn't want to go through because it's got a little bit of a curve to it, but we did get it through in the end. Then you just slide that wire through so the doll is lined up with the centre. Then get yourself a Sharpie and just mark either side of the doll just to make sure that you do glue the correct place, and you just slide that back out, glue between the marks, and then slide it back in again. So here we go, just find those marks, a little bit of glue, and then just gently slide it back in. Just watch that glue doesn't build up at one end because it can get a little bit messy. There we go, just leave them a couple of minutes and let that glue dry. So once that glue's dried, just bend the wire down to roughly where you want the arm to end and bend it back up on itself. Give it a little pinch and then just trim off that excess, and obviously do that for the other side as well. So he's now got 2 arms that are about mid-thigh length. So before we give this guy some sleeves to his coat, we need to give him some little hands. So we just put a little dab of glue just on the very end of the wire there, because we need the glue to stick to the wool. The wool will just slide off the end otherwise. So we just do that, and then get a little bit of this. I'm using eggshell carded sliver from World of Wool, and just get a little thin strip, really tiny amount because you don't want it to be too lumpy and bulky, and just wrap that around the ends of the wire. There we go. Wrap that nice and tightly and just give it a little felt to hold it in place. Just be careful not to get the needle stuck in the glue, which I did. There you go. Just wiping the glue off the needle there. And just give that a good felt all over, get it nice and smooth. And make sure you cover the ends there as well, otherwise the wire shows through. So there we go, and then we just want to do exactly the same for the other hand on the other side. There we go, 1 hand and 2 hands. So now we're just going to use more or less the same technique to cover the arms and create the sleeves. Just get another nice thin strip. I just took the wire underneath there, just twisted the wire around a little bit. And then just cover the arm in a little bit of glue so that wool's going to stick. Not too much, just enough to grip. Then take the wool and you just plant it at the top of the arm there and start to wrap it really nice and tightly. If you've got too much wool, just pull a little bit off the end so you can really get a good grip, and wrap that nice and tightly all the way so it just covers the top of the hand. And then wrap it back up again and give it a good felt. And you just continue adding strips of wool and building up the arm until you're happy with the width and the firmness of it, I suppose. Just make sure it's really well felted and it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to stop waffling and let you see the process. And there we go, and you just do exactly the same for the second arm, and we're nearly there now. So next we want to add some little cuffs, so it looks like the cuffs of his coat are hanging over his hands. So to make the cuffs, we're going to take a chunk of this wool again that you used for the coat and felt it again on the felting brush. Just give it a good felt with the punch tool, and then you want to fold it over and felt it again so you've got a nice straight edge like we did with the edge of the coat. Just give it another good felt on your regular felting mat to really knit it together. And then you want to take the coasters again and go along that edge and just neaten all that up. And I used a 40 gauge spiral needle just to do this part. Now we've actually made enough to make both of the cuffs here, so just give it a snip in half through the middle. And you want to take the edge that's been cut and just hide it round the back there and have the neat edge hanging over the hand and the fluffy edge up towards the top where it's going to connect to the rest of the arm. Just start felting it in there, bring it around, just wrap it around the arm there and give it another felt just so there's a bit of an overlap and you're not going to see that initial attachment. And then just take your scissors, trim off any excess, but I've trimmed down towards the ends of the pieces of wool here just so you don't have another blunt edge that you need to hide, and then it's easier to attach and make that a seamless attachment. I've said attach too many times now, it doesn't seem like a word anymore. So I'm just going to give this one last go over and make sure that it's all attached. All nice and attached, all nice and smooth and flat, and just go all the way around there, front and back. And there we go, we've pretty much done that one now. There is your first cuff. Now just do the second cuff in the exact same way. Just felting along, wrapping it around and then giving it a good felt all over. And there we go, there's both the cuffs, and all that's left to do now is the hood, which we're going to attach round the back, just along the back of the collar here. Right, so you want to grab another chunk of that nice wool that you're using for your coat colour and just size it up against the back of the collar there. Make sure that when you fold it in half you're going to have enough volume, and you do want to make it a little bit bigger than you think just so it doesn't end up too small. Can't really give exact measurements for this bit because it is more of an art than a science, it's just judged by eye. Now we're going to go in and we're going to start felting this just the same as we did with the cuffs. Just give it a good felt all over with the punch tool using the felting brush, and then peel that off, do the other end. There we go. Right, now what we want to do is fold over one edge and just using your, I think I used the 38 gauge regular needle here, just start folding that over and felting it in again like we did with the cuffs when we folded them in half. And just peel that off, and we want to fold in either side at a slight angle. You'll see what I mean here, just at a slight angle, so the tidy edge is the wider end and then the fluffy edge, which is going to be sort of where we attach the hood, that's going to be a little bit narrower. There we go. Now I did spot here that there's a little thin bit, so I just added a bit more wool on top, and then I just gave this one more pass and just a good felt all over. I should have actually used the coasters and gone round those tidied edges again, but I forgot. First time filming a YouTube video and just gotten a bit of a flap, but never mind. So here I am just sizing up the hood against the back and trying to suss out how that needs to be folded in order to look like a hood. Like I say, this bit's a bit more art than science, and you just sort of have to feel your way with it. So we're going to attach that bit that I folded over at the top firmly to the collar, and then this bit's going to fold upwards to form the hood. So you can see here sort of what I'm aiming for there. Now you want to fold over these edges and you want to felt down this top half. This is the fluffy half that's going to be attached to the back of the collar, so give those a good felt down. And then these bits stay loose, and I noticed they were hanging over the edge a little bit, so I just shortened those, which is easy enough to do. It's a good thing with wool, it's really malleable and you can just make those little amendments as you need. Like I say, this bit you very much have to feel your way. So this is how it should look at this stage. Just double checking. Yep, that looks good, that looks like a hood. All good in the hood, if you will. Just trim off these edges, and then you just want to attach that to the back of the collar and give that a really good firm felt, but only from that line where you felted it over. You want to leave the flappy bits flappy at this point. Now when you're happy with that, here I am just checking that that's all lying right, that's all going to look like a hood, like I want it to, and you can just felt down those inner flaps and hold it into position. And just do the same on the other side there. And that should all be good. Let's have another check of that. Yeah, that's how we're wanting it to look. Now we just want to hide all of these creases along the edge, so just start folding and pinning that in, just felting it down nice and neat, and we're just going to go all the way around the hood until you're happy with it and it's attached firmly and you can't see any of that inner workings on the side. And there we go, there's your little hood, and the coat is pretty much finished at this point. You can leave it just like this, or as I mentioned before, I did decide to embellish it after the fact, so let's have a look at that. So I'm just using some yarn. I don't think it's a wool yarn, it's just acrylic. It's very thin yarn, and I'm just going to felt a line right around the edge of the main body of the coat. You just need to keep a little bit of tension on it. Go right into those corners there, and just gently felt it in. I think I was using the 38 triangular or regular needle at this point, and just went all the way around the coat, being really careful not to felt those loose bits into the character. It did make my life difficult here, not doing this before I attached the coat, but lessons were learned and it worked out fine in the end. I did just have to, just snip the end off there. I did just have to pull it slightly away there at the end, just where it had felted slightly to the jeans of the character, but it was fine. All worked out. There we go. Now here I'm just going to give those lapels one last felt down, just along the seams and into the corners a little bit, just to hold them into the position I want. They had started to lift up a bit as I've been working on the felt, but that is probably the last thing you want to do. There you go. Now I'm just going to add 2 little buttons here. There they are. And just add them on, just trying them for position there. You can do as many buttons as you want. You could do smaller ones, you could felt buttons on, but these I just decided to do 2 little buttons, and I just glued those on really easily. Again, you could sew them on if you can be bothered to do that, but I couldn't at this point. There you go. And of course I thought I was finished at this point and realised I hadn't actually added the trim around the hood, so again, there's me trying to fix my mistakes, just lining up that trim. Oh, it didn't want to stick there. It didn't want to stick. Here we go, lining it up and just felting around the hood, trying my best not to attach the hood to the back of the collar, which is exactly what I've been trying to avoid. But here we go. I did manage to do it. I just needed to lift it up a little bit again at the end there, same as I did with the back of the coat. And oh, that little end did not want to stay. Did not want to stay. You can always switch to a spiral needle if that happens to you, and sometimes it just tucks those ends in a little bit better. But there we go, he's all done, coat's all finished. I hope you've managed to stick with me this long and that you found this video useful. I'd love to see anything that you make. I'll post my socials in the description below, and please tag me if you manage to make a character wearing one of my little duffel coats. So this is the little chap that I was making, who is now finished. Anyone who watches the Uncanny TV show will maybe recognise him as Danny Robbins. So there he is in his little red duffel coat with his little backpack, and I will actually be making that backpack in a future video. It's really, really easy. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave me a comment and I'll add it to the list. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!